it's in some sense, it's an escapist thing. And in other ways, it's a fantasy thing. And in other ways, it's a dangerous obsession that we should curtail. But until then, watch Season 4, Part 2 of my show, You, starring me. Hey, I'm Penn Badgley here with ELLE UK to play Ask Me Anything. Well, not that, but anything else. No, Dan and Joe would hate each other. Dan, because he's not an actual killer, even though he's arguably a sociopath, sociopathic. He would hate Joe because Joe's an actual murderer, and you should. Although we know if we just loved Joe as a baby boy, he'd never become a killer, but that's not what he is now. He's a full-grown killer. So Joe would hate Dan. Joe would hate Dan, because he would reflect him back to himself. Impossibly well. Yeah, they would really despise each other. They would have narrations inside of their minds about it, and then I guess Joe would probably kill Dan. There's a spinoff. I had no idea how iconic the cap would become. I remember the first time I had to wear it inside rather than outside. Because outside, it's like, okay, people wear hats. Outside, it actually kind of works past a certain, when you have the hat on, you kind of keep your head down. It's not that big of a deal. I'm pretty sure in the pilot, or maybe the second episode, Joe is stalking Beck, R.I.P. Beck, in a hat inside a bar. And that was the first time I was like, guys, I mean, it's a little conspicuous in the windbreaker and the cap at a bar. And we all laughed about it on set, knowing that we had to choose one or the other. Like, is Joe taking the cap on and off to truly blend in, or what we're doing is telling a story where this icon, this archetype, is now engaging in this chase that will ultimately end in, death. And is it more important that we have consistency there, like just visual iconography? And I think for our kind of show, the visual iconography is far more important. Way to take something fun and make it boring, right? If you really want an answer, that's it. So that's that. So how do I feel about it? I think it's funny. Everybody else does. The best thing about filming in London was, I'm not pandering here, was the people, the culture, because I actually didn't get to do a lot of the tourist things. I didn't have time, frankly. I mean, there were some things I did, like I walked across some bridges. I think I went to one museum. I went to Borough Market, was that what it's called? Yeah, I went there a bit, and that was great. But really, just being here and living here like Americans don't usually get to as a tourist. Honestly, that and the tea. And it sounds cheesy, and as though I'm pandering, but I'm not. It was you, and your tea. Was not that love was a killer. Sorry, spoiler alert. But that Joe would hate her for it, even though it makes a lot of sense. It tracks because of course he would. Of course he would. But I kind of thought they would have a Bonnie and Clyde thing, even though they sort of did for season 3 a little bit. But yeah, the fact that he would immediately turn on her, that was gut-wrenching. That was hard. But again, it makes the most sense. So the way we do the narration is I record it beforehand in a vocal booth with very little interactions with anybody else. So there's an engineer, and usually it's a handful of different people because we'll be doing it in different places. And they're behind glass, and they scarcely speak. And it's me, really, and Stephanie Johnson, our post-producer and supervisor. And she'll just every now and then kind of add a comment, but what's amazing about it is that they really just let me go. And I give a lot of different levels, always trying to inject comedy and tragedy in somewhat equal measure. And it's very fun. I get to be very physical. I often, if I can't, it's interesting channeling your voice all into just your whole performance into this space right here. It's, in a sense, it's almost more physical than playing Joe because I have to be so quiet. I have to just stand there and be very tense, which is physical. Trust me, it's very, very physical, and I get back problems from it. But it's a different kind of physical. I take my shoes off, and I raise my arms, and it's almost like gymnastic. So it's like a completely different side of Joe. And then I don't think about them. I don't think about what I'm going to do as an actor when I'm doing that, and I don't think about as an actor what I did in the voiceover, except for maybe these rare moments where they have to intersect, but that's the editor's job. So yeah, it's cool. It's like playing two people. I think the question is, what kind of character would she want to play? Cardi B is already such a character herself. I'm really curious what she would want to do. Because I mean, like, you know, she's obviously a musician and talented. However, that's not the same thing as acting. I'd be really curious to see, you know, how much she could, because she has a whole persona, and that persona's so big. If it was like that, she'd have to be, well, she'd have to play Cardi B. I gotta ask her this. We've still been trying to meet up. I'm busy, and she's very busy. Haven't been able to make it happen yet, but I think she definitely can't die. Definitely don't want that. Our obsession with serial killers is specific, and there's a lot of, like, there is a whole kind of body of, like, studies and writing and done on this. You know, statistically speaking, we should be far more worried about a lot of other things. And we know that the creation of a serial killer is somewhat in, if not entirely, in, like, the experiences they've had after birth. Like, nobody's born a psychopath or a sociopath. Maybe the science is still out on that, but I think we should, it's dangerous if you think people can come out the womb bad, you know? So we should chalk it up to a miseducation and trauma. And if it's about miseducation and trauma, well, then it says, you know, rather than looking at what we could do to reform society ourselves, we want to tell stories and watch stories about letting the horror play out. It's, in some sense, it's an escapist thing. And in other ways, it's a fantasy thing, and in other ways, it's a dangerous obsession that we should curtail. But until then, watch Season 4, Part 2 of my show, You, starring me. I don't know that I'd want to be it. Well, okay, so my co-star this season, Charlotte Ritchie, Ghosts, the BBC version, not the UK version, not the US version, I truly love. The ghosts themselves are hilarious. So frankly, I'd just love to take Charlotte's role. I think I could do that. Aaron nailed that, obviously. You know, the reveal that people have taken it to be is, look, everybody's always up for these roles. It's always between you and somebody else, usually. I mean, there's got to be some other person who was down to the wire. Maybe they had, yeah, I mean, as far as I can recall, it was a long time ago. It was 16 years ago. I was the other guy, and I really loved the role. And I knew Aaron because we'd actually tested against each other for some other things too. I haven't seen him much since because our careers have taken us different states always. Lovely guy, obviously a great show. But I've not seen all of Breaking Bad, so yeah. But I know he's killing it. I know he did a great job. Kendrick Lamar would be my top. He would be all the top 3 of my guests. I would sacrifice all of our guests on an altar with blood. It's extreme. Why not go there? For Kendrick. Kendrick would be 1. Well, there's D'Angelo, but I'm not even. He's been my number 1 for like 20 years. But he's a bit of a recluse, and I wouldn't ever try to get him on, and I don't know how that would be. But, I mean, he's such a sensitive soul. I would love to have him on. 3rd, Lauryn Hill. I'll just go ahead and say that. Thank you so much for all your questions. I hope you enjoy Season 4. I'll see you soon.